Hey there, folks. Welcome back one more time. Hopefully, not the last time, knock on wood, to the Crazy Libertarian. You are listening on 88.1 FM. That call in number is 701 566 0917. 701 566 0917. This is, of course, on KPPP Fargo. That is 88.1 FM. One more time, KPPP 88.1 FM out of beautiful Fargo, North Dakota. Fargo, Moorhead, North Dakota / Minnesota. We're not biased against borders here. It's a pretty big thing on libertarians. So, I'm going to disappoint some of you and completely go over this whole New Hampshire primary thing because, whatever. Bloomberg's just going to buy his way into it late, and they're going to change a bunch of rules. No matter what happens, the Democratic Party they are not looking pretty. So I want to talk about something that actually matters and might impact some of our lives and what we're dealing with. So for those of you who, if there's any experts in like bottom feeders on my show, you might have known that Roger Stone just got out of his sentence, it looks like. President Trump came out and said the 9 years that he was recommended to face in prison he said it was like disgusting or whatever Trump speak he used. And now it looks like the Department of Justice is going to be backing away from the 9-year prison recommendation, or 9 years in prison recommendation that they gave him, essentially because Trump said so. Which leads us to a very weird and interesting situation where the president, Donald Trump, has gotten a guy out of trouble who lied to Congress on behalf of President Donald Trump. I really got to give Trump credit because we've had some awful presidents in American history, right? Like some of the worst. When we think of them, we think of like Richard Nixon and that fiasco. I know older people that are still pissed that Ford pardoned Richard Nixon. However, Trump is one-upping that, and he's just pardoning people that lied to him without giving up power. That's something right there. Trump is an excellent politician, man. He is just taking none of this admitting a little guilt here or there. No. And then you know what? Because, as we mentioned previously, the sad, sorry state of the Democratic Party, there's a good chance that they might just use this momentum and run all the way into 2020 with it. What a weird and sad world we live in. As a matter of fact, we might even get to see how much that old, 2-term limits things really applies when someone like Trump, who might not want to give up power, is in the White House. It's going to be awesome, but I really want to focus in on this Roger Stone bit, right? Because there's a lot wrapped up in it. Now, obviously, I think it's fair to say, based on what I talk about on the show, not a huge Roger Stone fan, as I'm not a huge Donald Trump fan, but what's extraordinary about this really isn't the fact that Trump pardoned someone that essentially lied in order to help Trump gain the presidency, right? Like, we always knew that Donald Trump was going to cover for people who covered for him. It's part of the reason why he exploded so fervently like John Bolton and everyone else. And yeah, I hate John Bolton for a whole series of other reasons, but what really, really irritates and pisses Trump off is disloyalty, and apparently he rewards loyalty to the same extent. Now, this is interesting because under the American system of law, of course, we're supposed to have, it's this thing called rule of law, where laws are supposed to apply equally to different people, different groups, all of that stuff. It's part of what's supposed to make America work, right? The fact that we're all playing by the same rules. So I really want to, as a libertarian, I almost want to applaud Trump for making it just evident how wrong and twisted our justice system really and truly is. Because in order to call this system fair or just, and like I said, Roger Stone is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, right? That's the first time that Roger Stone's been the tip of anything. But good for Stone, finally getting in the top 5% of something. But I really want to go back to how many people, and I know that Trump has made some half-assed steps towards criminal justice reform, which really have only looked quite so good, because the fact of the matter is that the people before Donald Trump were some of the worst, that like the 50 or 60 years we had before Trump stepped into office were the worst 50 or 60 years we've had arguably, for the American justice system in this country since Jim Crow. The things that we've engineered, the war on drugs, all of these fines and fees that target poor people, especially for being poor, horrible. But what makes this interesting is that we have prisons full of people that will probably never see the light of day, right? We have people like Ross Ulbricht, who we'll get into later, serving 2 life sentences plus 40 years for a website. And yet, when you actually lie to Congress, particularly in order to swing an election outcome during a hotly contested election, all it takes is one. And, they're all egomaniacs. That's how they get to that position in the first place. But one particularly brazen president to look the other way, and you can get out of almost anything in this country. Assuming you have the money, assuming you have the resources, assuming we have the power. Unfortunately, what we've come to realize is that most people in this country don't have these things and don't get any of those nice little benefits. And Roger Stone, who Trump went on and said that, is ridiculous that he was prosecuted for blah, 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 whatever the case may be. But what's interesting is that when people actually take steps to, fight the deep state, which I think is one of those things that Donald Trump might have got elected on, but I lost enough brain cells listening to his campaign speeches, so I try not to think about it too hard. But he said that he was going out to fight the deep state. He was going to, do all this awesome stuff. He was the anti-Hillary Clinton. Do you know who actually went up and took a very big stab at the deep state and is the reason that we're having a lot of the discussions about privacy and other things that we've had throughout the last decade? Julian Assange. The WikiLeaks guy. The guy who, published information that proved that the government was lying to us, boldly lying to us, by the way, all the time on a lot of different issues. He was helped by Edward Snowden, who is now in exile. Julian Assange was on the run for many years. He's been taken, I think he's being held in Britain, if I'm not mistaken. And what was he wanted for, right? He published classified information, and Julian Assange just kind of published everything. And was then loved by the Democrats throughout the throughout the early part of the decade when he showed how horrible and evil and, based on lies, not only a lot of the Middle East conflicts were, but also how horrible they were and what they did with the abuses of the Patriot Act and all that government surveillance, to then being hated by Democrats because he apparently swung the election, or tried to swing the election in Trump's favor. But what I want to get to here is this. We have a person who is obviously, say what you will about say what you will about Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. I would, they were clearly nonviolent crimes. They were furthermore proving that the federal government was breaking a lot of its own rules and that millions of people were being, potentially tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions even, were being affected by their abuses of power. And so how does Donald Trump, the anti-deep state candidate, go and return the favor? Well, the recent news, and this was always part of the reason that people, part of the reason that Edward Snowden's still on the run, part of the reason that a lot of people, myself included, were really worried if Assange were to come into custody, is that since he's been taken into British custody, his health has rapidly deteriorated. He's seemed confused and very disoriented at his trial hearings. There's reports that he always appears to be quote-unquote dying. He's usually heavily sedated. I'm not one to toss conspiracy theories out willy-nilly on this show, but that's a little bit of a weird overlap. So you clearly have someone that reported on the abuses of government, many of those abuses that Trump railed on in order to get elected in 2016, and then the great anti-swamp warrior leaves him to die in a hospital and, thousands of miles away, just because he actually took a swing at the deep state. And I think that really kind of exemplifies where we're at with this whole justice system, right? If you're willing to twist justice in order to do it in a partisan, short-sighted way, and if you have the connections, you can pretty much get away with anything. Because with Trump's propensity to fire literally anyone, reshuffle his cabinet, he will do all kinds of stuff of varying legalities, as we learned recently, in order to influence these outcomes. What does the rule of law become? What does it become when it's really easy for the well-connected to skirt the process in obviously biased ways, versus people that actually attempt to bring about real change, who then end up either on the run for the rest of their life or dying in a prison appearing disoriented and confused, or, sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years. It just seems incredibly, incredibly obvious that Donald Trump has finally highlighted what we've been talking about for so long, which is that we really don't have much of a justice system in this country, because a justice system implies that it's just, or that it is in fact a system. And by the way, I would love to kind of circle back to the fact that Edward Snowden is still on the run, despite the fact that most of what Edward Snowden released was widely agreed upon to be horribly wrong and illegal, right? That's why they changed a lot of the laws afterwards. It led to the joke that was the USA Freedom Act, which allegedly took some steps to repeal the horrible stuff that he was reporting on and all that other stuff. So even when you have someone like Edward freaking Snowden, who is a, public servant for his whole life, who done nothing wrong up to that point, who really had just kind of had enough of the obvious abuses, and he has to give up his whole life for it in what is, I think, pretty clearly an act of public service, right? Putting all of that on the line in order to get the secrets out about the wrongs that your government's doing. Well, he's still not home. He's still attempting to be prosecuted by our government. And yet Roger Stone, who lied to Congress just to help get Trump elected, gets to, I don't know if they'll actually just give him like 9 years of probation or what they're going to do, but, you can guarantee it to his original sentence of 9 years that it's going to be pretty scot-free. Gets to walk. I don't know if Donald Trump was never serious about taking the swamp, but it seems to me that Donald Trump has not only figured out how to use the swamp, but he is in fact running it from the top of Trump Tower. He may have even figured out how to install a golf course, but I imagine that the water hazards in the swamp would be a real pain in the ass. But nonetheless, if there's anyone out there that still thinks that this Donald Trump is any kind of a reformer, I really, really ask you to Google the condition of Julian Assange and tell me that he is. We'll be right back, folks. This has been the Crazy Libertarian. And for those of you listening on the radio, thanks again for tuning in, by the way. Tell your friends. Because I'm boring, I decided to change it up, and even I get sick of my voice. We got 2 songs of the day. The first one is, I think it kind of speaks to what we're talking about, the injustice of justice, right? This is I would love to call it a classic, never really got much airtime. I kind of stumbled my way into it. It's an old song by Chris Christopherson from 1970 called The Laws for Protection of the People. And I really think it sort of encapsulates, yeah, let's pretend that's a word, really all that is wrong with the American system of justice. And the sad part is it's been blatantly wrong for well over 50 years. So without further ado, The Laws for Protection of the People. Hey there, we are back, but you already knew that, didn't you? So, we're talking a lot about justice today and kind of what remains of the American justice system, right? And all the horrors of it. But I kind of want to transition to something a little bit different that might resonate with some of our listeners. So this is something that came out relatively recently, but there's been a lot of fallout from it. So obviously the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico a couple of years back, one of the worst that they'd seen. There were tons of donations sent, tons of very critical responses to the federal government and the territory of Puerto Rico, I guess, their response and all of that stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that was, as it turns out, maybe unfairly dumped on Donald Trump and the whole thing. And so it came out a few weeks ago, because Puerto Rico has been hit by a series of devastating earthquakes. Been a tough few years for that region. Is that we have reports of a warehouse full of supplies that was being raided. This comes from January 19th to the 20th, around that time, so right around 3 weeks ago now. And literally there were just tons of water and cots and medical supplies and food that were left totally undistributed from the hurricane that they went through a couple of years back, which sparked outrage. Someone got fired in Puerto Rico, but that's not necessarily, that whole thing isn't what this is about. What I really kind of want to shine the light on here is the sort of ivory tower positions that we hear a lot in the United States when it comes to things like aid and things like justice and, why we need the federal government involved in things and all of this stuff. So here we had a very corrupt local official that, for either laziness or for whatever personal reasons, didn't distribute it, people died, etc., etc. But I just kind of want to get out there, what is the recourse for those people that were impacted by it? What can they do? The former emergency director lost his job. I imagine that there's a chance that he could be held criminally liable, at least for negligence, but what's the recourse for them? Is there going to be some big lawsuit hitting an already cash-strapped territory? Is the federal government going to come in and reward some type of compensation for how they were wronged? I'll tell you what's probably going to happen. Well, a lot of the people that could have used the aid, I'm sure, either found it through other sources or might have gotten very sick and died and might no longer be pertinent to the conversation, but nothing's going to happen for these people that were, depending on which level of government you want to blame, severely stiffed by their own government. Nothing's going to happen to them. And this isn't the first time that the federal government is completely, messed up either an aid situation or whatever. I mean, I don't think we have to think back too far to remember Hurricane Katrina and the disorganized and slow response that the federal government had there. Not to mention how some of the reports they had with how the local authorities and stuff like that were maintaining law and order over all else, and a whole host of things. I mean, I think it was Kanye West, wasn't it? Boy, what a weird couple decades it's been since then. They went on TV and said that, President Bush hates black people in response to the Hurricane Katrina aid. But this is a pattern, right? We've seen it before and we're seeing it again, where those with access not only get treated very, very differently from those without access, but I really want to focus on a big part of the American justice system here. A big part of our justice system is that when bad things happen to people that caused it should be in some way punished or held responsible or whether it be financial recourse to the people. There's always some focus on restorative justice. But when the government messes up, especially in something as important as, life-saving aid, there is often not a lot of justice to be doled out. And so we really need to think about this in terms of in terms of the government taking an ever bigger step into our daily lives, right? Because let's think about it. We have just an astronomical amount of government involvement, and it's growing, some would say by the day, with how we do literally everything in this country. I mean, I've railed against the calls to expand, government influence in healthcare and education and all of that stuff in the past. But what I really would like people to focus on for a minute here is where, when the people that are making the rules are ignoring the rules pretty blatantly and then letting their friends get away with it. I mean, if you can get away with lying to Congress because you have the president's goodwill, you can pretty much get away with anything, right? And that's a really terrifying thought. So where is the recourse when who polices the police, essentially, when they go awry? And we don't really have a good answer for that. The response after Hurricane Katrina was that we had a lot more, the government reformed how they handed out their aid, and we had a lot of private charities step up and all of that good stuff. But does that really help the people that were purposely left behind and who died in the immediate hours afterwards? Does one person getting fired in Puerto Rico and, maybe some elected officials losing their jobs, as they certainly should by this point, really Does that make those people whole? And the answer is, of course it doesn't. And not only does our system of justice make it really, really hard for those that are already at the bottom to, seek recourse when they've been wronged, but our system of justice is so twisted. And mind you, a man who is looking at almost a decade in prison for lying under oath to Congress got off, and we don't know exactly how scot-free he's going to get off, but pretty damn scot-free. Well, law and order is important to this country if you're, doing something like crossing the border illegally to look for a better life for your family. We have had reports for years now, and it didn't start under the Trump administration, but he certainly belly hoops it up because I guess it plays well to his base. He has a poor understanding of economics and free trade. I don't really understand it. Maybe it's because I have a soul, but you have Border Patrol agents that go around and routinely dump out water and food and other supplies left for people that are traveling from between Mexico and the United States. They go out to rural places, aid groups unrelated to the smuggling or whatever will drop water and food, and the United States government, in an attempt to discourage people from making the trip, has decided to go out and just dump it all out and ruin it and take away that source so that it makes it, harder for the coyotes or whatever to do their job and blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, what ends up happening in practice, as someone who has thought about the situation for more than 30 seconds can tell you, is that the people that are organizing these little caravans, the coyotes as they call them in Mexico, are typically look kind of like me, right? They're young, relatively fit and healthy men who you can be damn sure, no matter how much you're getting paid, will make it out alive. I really wouldn't want to go through this, but assuming that I had a few days to prepare, it's not totally unheard of for someone who's young and relatively healthy to go without water for 48 to 72 hours and to still be, you won't be good, but you can more or less make it. Do you know who can't make it that long without water after going over a very long distance in time? People that are old and, might be traveling to visit family, people that might be sick, kids, because so many of these people travel with families, women who might be pregnant or any of that stuff. So essentially, not to mention those that might just not be in good shape in the first place, right? Because if you're suiting up to cross the border and looking for a better life and looking for employment and all that stuff, you're probably not coming from a super great background in your current country. So, it's safe to say that for some of these people, you have issues like malnutrition or what have you coming into it. And so essentially what happens is that the people that are smuggling them, who get paid in advance, will continue to smuggle them. And the only people that will actually pay for the Border Patrol's inhumane policy, like I said, it's not going to be the people that are, young and healthy running these people across the border. It's going to be the women that are with them. It's going to be the kids that are with them. It's going to be any elderly that are with them. It's going to be, because people always have this weird theory that everyone that crosses the border is like coming over here to get on benefits and immediately take your job and all that stuff. But there's a lot of reasons why people immigrate, a lot of reasons why people can't get visas. Family things, yes, a lot of it is work, which should be opened up anyhow. Something else we've talked about on this show quite a bit. But there's all kinds of reasons. And the question that I want to ask is, are we comfortable sentencing all of those people? Because like I said, a lot of the people that are traveling, kids that are going with their parents don't have a choice, right? The elderly who might be very sick and just want to see their kid one more time, or who has a son or daughter that's living in America but not legally but can get to a better situation over there. Are we really willing to sentence these people to what is effectively a slow and torturous death? Because that's exactly what we're doing. And once again, how can we call this a justice system? Because I don't have the exact numbers. I don't have the information on me right now, but if I'm not mistaken, illegal entry is only a misdemeanor in this country. And lying to Congress is, lying to Congress. And so the same administration, the same government that is perfectly content letting people, especially the sick, the old, and the young, die in a desert of dehydration over a cruel and stupid in the first place border policy, are very willing to go pardon their friends that get away with much, 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 much worse. And like I said, I think that this should really serve as kind of a point of reflection, right? Because we have all of these people that are getting absolutely screwed through no fault of their own, through what essentially comes down to administrative decisions in Puerto Rico and the case of Hurricane Katrina. And we have people that are, quote unquote, just following orders, doing their, quote unquote, jobs at the Border Patrol in southern Mexico, doing horrible things, and these people will get absolutely zero recourse. I imagine that the movies that they're going to make in 20 to 30 years' time on the horrors of the American Border Patrol will, I imagine, win an Oscar, and there'll be some nice little speech about how evil it was and how far we've come as a society. But the point remains, nothing is being done about it now. And I would also like to use this to kind of backdoor my way into the whole Democratic debates. The Democrats have become so focused on becoming the anti-Trump that they have forgot to look at what Trump is doing that's wrong in the first place. Because Trump is doing a lot more than saying mean words or yada, yada, yada. Because what he's really done is undermine that crucial, crucial rule of law. But the problem that the Democrats have is that they've been trying to use the same sick, twisted system to defeat him, and it just doesn't sell to the average American. And it's just kind of sad and pitiful that they can't utilize this obviously broken justice system to just beat them over the head with it, because they have been just as complicit themselves. And, it's like I was thinking earlier, why is it that no matter what we do in this country, we seem to always it seems like the real decision makers haven't really moved beyond the early 2000s, you know what I mean? Because it kind of sort of feels like a lot of this, I don't want to say has happened before, but it sure does seem weird that we're having these pointless, 2020 debates when we're not debating the wars that we've been in for the last 20 years, the immigration fiasco. I mean, our southern border's been a mess really for most of the last century, right? Going back into, we had programs to import workers from World War II to pick fruit that spiraled out of control, blah, blah, blah. But none of the important stuff really seems to be getting talked about. And I don't know if it's just because I'm entering my early young age and I'm starting to get a little nostalgic, but man, I really wish that we weren't so caught up in the early 2000s. It's horrendous. And then one thing that I kind of want to center in on here, there's a concept that's been employed and is in fact being employed to monitor our society, which essentially says that when everyone thinks that they could be monitored at any one moment, they will police their behavior better than any actual police ever could, right? Well, I'd like to kind of stick to what happens at the opposite end of that, because I think it's fair to say that, everyone that's listening to this is probably being monitored in some way, shape, or form. I mean, with how expansive the FISA courts have gotten, and with how wide, and we don't really know what the NSA and CIA are collecting, right? I mean, Snowden warned us about something back in 2010, but it's kind of gone dark, and plus Trump has shown a real propensity to be all for the deep state when it's going after people that he doesn't like. So, at the end of the day, we just don't know exactly what it is that they're doing. And I really, really just want to focus in on how we don't know. And that should kind of scare us, right? Because we have these debates going on about nothing. I guarantee you that no matter who wins the Democratic primary, the debate that we're going to have is Trump arguing about how the Democrats are socialist and the economy is so great, and the Democrats are using buzzwords to try and defeat Trump and playing the same playbook that happened in 2016. But we just don't know what our own government is up to right now. We don't know how much we're being monitored. And since we're all being monitored, it's almost like none of us are being monitored, because I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but a massive, massive amount of rapes and murders go unsolved in this country. A lot of violent crime, a lot of property crime goes unsolved. Why? Because police departments at the local, state, and federal level are focusing on things that benefit them and make them money. You know, the reason that, ultimately, the reason that Donald Trump pardoned, not Snowden, pardoned Roger Stone is the same reason that a lot of local police departments choose to prioritize targeting low-level marijuana offenses and things for civil asset forfeiture instead of going after murderers. You do what do what makes sense for you, and you play the system the best you can in order to take advantage of it, which is the same thing that's going on. So the reason that a lot of our rape kits continue to go untested in this country, the reason that a lot of murders go uncontested, the reason that that police seem more prone to arrest people for minuscule amounts of drugs instead of doing hard work like actually fighting, you know, the actual bad human sex traffickers, instead of just locking up or instead of just shutting down websites. What it all comes down to is that this justice system really isn't rule of law. This justice system is really rule of whatever is most convenient for he who is closest to the lever of power. Think about that. Your district attorney, your sheriff, whoever is in control could selectively pick people at any time, and because there's tons of laws that we could theoretically be breaking, right? And so it just really comes up to there's so much choice in our justice system, and it's obvious that those that are in control have leveraged it so that they don't have to do the hard work if they don't want to do the hard work. And I think that's really sad, and I think that's really in the open, and I think that's really telling. Because this justice system really doesn't care about justice or safety or rule of law. It's pretty evident that it cares about expediency, convenience, and results. And until we can actually confront these problems in our justice system and in our entire system of government, we're going to have the same problems that we saw in Hurricane Katrina, the same issues that we saw with the aid in Puerto Rico. We're going to continue to see people dying in the southern border over inhumane and stupid and pointless border policies. We're going to continue to see people get arrested for no good reason. The fact is, until we start actually questioning the whole system, we can't expect bits and pieces of it to change. And that's not going to matter no matter who wins the New Hampshire primary for the Democrats until we start asking the real questions. So, on a very sad and depressing note, this has been the Crazy Libertarian. Thank you for tuning in. Hey there, closing out this song today, and you know, everything seems is a real depressing, no one cares topic. And so it made me think of this classic. This is Heroin from the Velvet Underground, from their first album, The Velvet Underground and Nico, written in 1967, and it kind of encapsulates sort of the cynicism that was growing in the late 60s that really kind of bubbled over into the mess that was the 1970s. And there's, you know, just with how horribly the government was lying about the whole Vietnam thing and all the other stuff, and sort of a sense of disillusionment, right? And so I was thinking a really disillusioned tune to close out this Wednesday morning. So without further ado, because, man, I think all I can do is sigh. We have a lot to do. Here is Heroin by the Velvet Underground.